Growing up, Madison and I were inseparable. We shared everything from secrets to dreams, especially after our parents divorced when I was 15 and she was just 12. I always thought that bond would never break even after I worked 7 years to buy my downtown Seattle penthouse. The 2-bedroom apartment with its stunning city view represented everything I had accomplished as an architect. But when Madison saw my home for the first time, something shifted in her eyes. I never thought my own sister would humiliate me in front of 200 wedding guests. Before I tell you what happened at that wedding, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. And if you are enjoying this story, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life family drama. Trust me, you will not believe what my sister did next. Let me paint you a picture of how we got here. My penthouse sits on the 20th floor of a modern building in downtown Seattle, complete with floor-to-ceiling windows and a balcony overlooking Elliott Bay. I bought it 3 years ago when my architecture firm finally took off. Those 7 years of 60-hour weeks, skipped vacations, and ramen dinners had finally paid off. The place was my sanctuary, my reward for all that sacrifice. Madison, my younger sister, worked as a receptionist at an upscale spa downtown. She made decent money, but nothing compared to what I earned designing commercial buildings. She lived with her fiancé Kyle in a small 1-bedroom apartment about 20 minutes from my place. We had always been close, especially since our parents split. I helped her through college, covered her car payments when she was unemployed, and supported her through every relationship drama. Our parents' divorce hit Madison harder than it hit me. She was only 12, still believing in fairy tales and perfect families. I became her protector, her second mom, in many ways. When Dad moved to California and Mom struggled with depression, I stepped up. I made sure Madison had everything she needed for school, drove her to soccer practice, and even helped her apply for college scholarships. After college, Madison seemed to find her footing. She met Kyle at a coffee shop where he worked as a barista while finishing his marketing degree. They were cute together, planning their future with the optimism that only 20-somethings possess. Kyle eventually landed a job at a small advertising firm, and they started talking about marriage. When Kyle proposed last Christmas, I was genuinely happy for them. That happiness started to crack the first time Madison visited my penthouse. It was a casual Sunday afternoon in February. Madison had called saying she wanted to see my place since I had been living there for 2 years, but never properly hosted her. I was excited to show off my home, to share this achievement with the person who knew how hard I had worked for it. The moment she walked through my front door, her jaw dropped. She wandered through each room, slowly running her fingers along my granite countertops, testing the firmness of my leather sectional, and standing mesmerized at the living room window. "This is incredible," she whispered, staring out at the Seattle skyline. "I cannot believe you live here all by yourself." At first, her amazement felt like validation. She was proud of me, impressed by what I had accomplished. But as the afternoon wore on, her comments shifted from admiration to something else. "You are so lucky," she repeated multiple times. "I wish I could afford something like this." Then came the more loaded observations. "It is such a big space for one person. Do you ever get lonely rattling around in here?" When she left that evening, she hugged me extra tight and said, "Wouldn't it be nice if we lived closer together? We could see each other every day, like when we were kids." I chalked it up to nostalgia and thought nothing more of it. Over the next few weeks, Madison's visits became more frequent. She would drop by unannounced, always with Kyle in tow. They would sit on my couch for hours talking about their cramped apartment, their noisy neighbors, and their dreams of someday owning a place like mine. "Maybe in 10 years we will be able to afford something half this nice," Kyle would say, shaking his head as he admired my kitchen's stainless steel appliances. Madison would nod thoughtfully, but I caught her looking at me with an expression I could not quite read. It was expectant, like she was waiting for me to offer something. 3 weeks before her wedding, Madison finally made her intentions clear. I was working late on a project when Madison knocked on my door. It was almost 9 o'clock on a Tuesday, unusual timing for a social visit. When I opened the door, I found her standing there with Kyle, both of them looking serious. "We need to talk," Madison said, brushing past me into the living room. They sat across from me on my couch, and Madison launched into what sounded like a rehearsed speech. "Kyle and I have been talking about our future, about starting our married life right. Our current apartment is too small, and the rent keeps going up. We have been looking at bigger places, but everything decent costs way more than we can afford." I nodded sympathetically, unsure where this was heading. "So we came up with a solution," Kyle chimed in. "A temporary arrangement that would help us save money and give us time to figure out our next step." Madison leaned forward, her eyes bright with excitement. "We want to move in here with you. Just temporarily, maybe 6 months. We would pay you rent, help with utilities, and it would be like old times when we lived together as kids." The request hit me like a cold wave. I stared at them, trying to process what they had just asked. "You want to move into my penthouse?" I said slowly. "Just until we can save enough for our own place?" Madison rushed to explain. "We would be great roommates. You know how clean I am, and Kyle is super handy with repairs and stuff. It would be fun." I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "Madison, I appreciate that you trust me enough to ask, but I have to say no. This place is my sanctuary. I work from home a lot, and I need the quiet and privacy for my projects. Plus, you two are about to be newlyweds. You need your own space to start your marriage." Madison's face fell instantly. "But we are family. I thought you would want to help us." "I do want to help you," I said gently. "I can look over your budget with you, maybe help you find a nice place in your price range, but moving in here is not the right solution." Kyle shifted uncomfortably, but Madison's expression hardened. "I cannot believe you are being so selfish," she said, her voice rising. "You have all this space, more than you could ever use, and you would rather let your own sister struggle than share it." "I am not letting you struggle," I protested. "You have an apartment. You have jobs. You are not homeless." Madison stood up abruptly. "I thought blood was thicker than water. I guess I was wrong about you." They left without another word, and I did not hear from Madison for 3 days. When she finally called, her voice was icy. "I hope you are happy with your decision. Do not expect me to be as supportive of you in the future." That phone call was just the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, my phone rang constantly. First, it was our mother. "Madison told me about your housing situation," Mom said. "I am disappointed in you, honey. Could not you help your sister out? She is getting married, starting a new chapter in her life." "Mom, it is my home," I explained. "I worked years to afford this place. I should not have to give up my privacy and space because Madison wants to save money." "No one is asking you to give up anything," Mom replied. "Just share it temporarily. That is what family does." After Mom came our Aunt Carol, then Uncle Jim, then Madison's matron of honor, Sarah. Each conversation followed the same pattern. Madison had painted me as the selfish older sister who refused to help family in need. She conveniently left out the part where she and Kyle had jobs and their own apartment. The worst part was discovering that Madison had been telling people at work, at the gym, basically anyone who would listen, that her sister acts like she is better than everyone else and refuses to help family. I started getting text messages from relatives I barely talked to, all variations on the same theme: family should stick together. "A little sacrifice goes a long way. Madison really needs your support right now." The pressure was overwhelming, but I stood firm. This was my home, my achievement, my sanctuary. I was not going to let guilt manipulate me into giving that up. 2 weeks before the wedding, the maid of honor duties became a nightmare. Madison and I had planned her bridal shower together, but during the event, she made passive-aggressive comments in front of all her friends. "I am so lucky to have bridesmaids who actually care about my future," she said, while opening gifts, looking pointedly at me. Later, when someone complimented my dress, Madison chimed in with, "Yes, she can afford nice things. Some of us are not so fortunate." The bridal shower should have been about celebrating Madison, but she turned it into a public forum for her grievances against me. The wedding dress fitting was even worse. Madison broke down crying in front of the seamstress, claiming she was stressed about having nowhere to live after the wedding. "My own sister has this beautiful penthouse, but she would rather see me struggle than help." Madison sobbed while the poor seamstress awkwardly continued pinning her hem. I discovered later that Madison had been telling wedding guests about our housing situation. People I had never met approached me at the bachelor and bachelorette parties, offering unsolicited advice about family obligations and the importance of helping loved ones. Kyle finally confronted me directly the week before the wedding. "You are really going to let your sister struggle when you have that big, empty penthouse?" he demanded during what was supposed to be a casual dinner. "She is not struggling," I replied calmly. "She has a home with you." "A tiny apartment that we can barely afford," Kyle shot back. "Meanwhile, you are sitting alone in luxury too selfish to share it with family." I realized then that Madison had been working on Kyle too, convincing him that I owed them something. 1 week before the wedding, Madison made her final desperate move. She arrived at my penthouse unannounced on a Tuesday evening, Kyle trailing behind her. I could tell by her expression that this was not a social visit. "We need to settle this once and for all," Madison announced, storming into my living room. "Madison, I thought we had already discussed this," I began, but she cut me off. "No, you decided. You did not discuss anything. You just said no and expected me to accept it." Kyle positioned himself near my kitchen arms, crossed like he was ready for a fight. Madison paced in front of my windows, gesturing wildly. "I have been thinking about this, and I realize I approached it wrong. I should not have asked you to let us move in." Relief washed over me. Finally, she was being reasonable. "I should have asked you to give me the penthouse," she continued. "Kyle and I deserve a fresh start, and you can always buy another place." My relief instantly turned to shock. "Give you the penthouse, Madison? What are you talking about?" "Transfer the ownership to me," she said matter-of-factly. "I am your only sister. I should inherit it anyway when something happens to you." I stared at her, unable to process what I was hearing. "You want me to give you my home?" I said slowly. "The home I worked 7 years to afford." "You can work 7 more years and buy another one," Madison replied with a shrug. "Kyle and I need it now. We are starting our marriage thinking about kids eventually. You are single, with no prospects. What do you need all this space for?" Kyle nodded in agreement. It makes sense when you think about it logically. I felt like I was in an alternate reality. "Madison, this is insane. You cannot be serious." "I researched property transfer laws," she said, pulling out her phone. "You can sign a quitclaim deed, and the transfer will be complete within 30 days. I already have the paperwork drawn up." She handed me a manila folder. Inside were legal documents already filled out, waiting only for my signature. "You had legal documents prepared without telling me?" I asked, my voice rising. "I wanted to make it easy for you," Madison said. "No lawyers, no complications. Just sign, and we can put this whole thing behind us." I looked at Kyle, hoping to see some sanity in his expression, but he was nodding encouragingly. "This is my home," I said firmly. "I am not giving it to you." Madison's face darkened. Then you will regret it. Is that a threat? I asked. It is a promise, she replied. If you do not sign over the penthouse before my wedding, you will wish you had. I stood up and walked to my front door, opening it wide. I think you both need to leave. As they walked past me, Madison turned back one last time. Do not say I did not warn you, she said quietly. After they left, I sat on my couch holding those legal documents, trying to understand how my relationship with my sister had deteriorated so completely. The Madison I grew up with would never have demanded something so outrageous, but grief, desperation, and entitlement had transformed her into someone I barely recognized. I threw the documents in my trash and tried to prepare myself for whatever Madison had planned. Saturday, June 15th, dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for an outdoor wedding. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 o'clock at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel in downtown Seattle, with the reception following in their grand ballroom. Madison had dreamed of this venue since high school, and she had somehow managed to book it despite her limited budget. I arrived at the hotel at 10 that morning for hair and makeup. As maid of honor, I was responsible for helping Madison get ready, managing the other bridesmaids, and ensuring everything ran smoothly. Despite our recent tensions, I was determined to put aside our differences and make her day perfect. Madison seemed to have the same idea. When I knocked on the bridal suite door, she greeted me with a huge smile and an enthusiastic hug. I am so glad you are here, she said, squeezing me tight. I could not do this without my big sister. The morning was surprisingly peaceful. Madison chatted happily with the hairstylist about her honeymoon plans, while I coordinated with the photographer and made sure the other bridesmaids knew their timeline. For a few hours, it felt like old times between us. I am sorry I was so stressed these past few weeks, Madison said while the makeup artist applied her foundation. Wedding planning made me a little crazy. I said some things I did not mean. Do not worry about it, I replied, genuinely relieved. Today is your day. Everything else can wait. The other bridesmaids arrived around noon, and we spent the afternoon laughing, taking photos, and helping Madison into her stunning white gown. She looked absolutely radiant, glowing with happiness and excitement. At 3:30, we made our way downstairs for the ceremony. The hotel's courtyard had been transformed into a fairy tale setting, with white flowers, flowing fabric, and twinkling lights. 200 guests filled the white wooden chairs, including family members I had not seen in years, Madison's college friends, and Kyle's colleagues. As we walked down the aisle, I noticed Judge Harrison Williams sitting in the third row with Kyle's parents. I knew him vaguely as a family friend of Kyle's father and a prominent Seattle judge, but we had never been formally introduced. The ceremony was beautiful. Madison and Kyle exchanged heartfelt vows that brought tears to my eyes. Despite everything that had happened between us, I was genuinely happy watching my sister marry the man she loved. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, I cheered along with everyone else. The cocktail hour passed smoothly. I mingled with guests, accepted compliments on my maid of honor dress, and helped Madison navigate the receiving line. She was beaming, absolutely glowing with joy, and I started to think our recent conflicts were truly behind us. At 6 o'clock, the wedding coordinator called everyone into the ballroom for dinner. The room was elegantly decorated with centerpieces of white roses and silver candles. The head table sat on a raised platform overlooking the other tables, with Madison and Kyle in the center, and the wedding party flanking them. I had spent weeks preparing my maid of honor speech. I wanted to capture the essence of our sisterhood, the memories we shared growing up, and my hopes for Madison's future. I had practiced it dozens of times, memorizing every word. After the salad course, the DJ announced it was time for speeches. I stood up, tapping my champagne glass to get everyone's attention. Good evening, everyone. I began, my voice carrying clearly through the ballroom's sound system. For those who do not know me, I am Serenity Madison's older sister and maid of honor. The crowd settled into attentive silence. Madison smiled up at me encouragingly. Madison and I have been through a lot together, I continued. When our parents divorced 13 years ago, we leaned on each other for support. Madison was only 12, but she showed incredible strength and resilience. I was hitting my stride, feeling good about the speech, when Madison suddenly stood up. Actually, she said loudly, reaching for the microphone in my hand, I have something to say first. Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. This was not part of the planned program. Madison. I whispered, let me finish the speech, then you can talk. But Madison was already taking the microphone from me. I want everyone to know what kind of person my sister really is, she announced, her voice amplified throughout the ballroom. My stomach dropped. The guests looked confused, unsure whether this was part of some planned entertainment or something else entirely. My sister owns a penthouse downtown. Madison continued, her voice gaining momentum. A beautiful, expensive penthouse with more space than she could ever use. Meanwhile, Kyle and I have been struggling in a tiny apartment, barely making ends meet. I tried to reach for the microphone, but Madison stepped away from me. I asked my sister, my own flesh and blood, to help us out. Just temporarily, just until we could get on our feet. But she refused. She would rather live alone in luxury than help her family. The ballroom had gone completely silent. 200 people were staring at us, watching this private family drama unfold in real time. Madison, please, I said, my voice barely audible without the microphone. This is not the time or place. When is the time? Madison shot back. When is it appropriate to ask your sister to care about your future? Judge Williams had stood up in his seat, watching intently. I caught his eye and saw concern in his expression. Everyone here knows how hard it is to afford housing in Seattle, Madison continued. My sister could help us, but she chooses not to. She would rather see her own sister struggle than sacrifice an ounce of her comfort. Kyle was trying to get Madison's attention from his seat, making calming gestures with his hands, but she was too focused on her public confrontation. Sign over the penthouse, Madison demanded, holding the microphone toward me. Right here, right now, in front of everyone. Show them that you actually care about family. The request was so outrageous, so completely inappropriate, that I could not immediately find words to respond. Madison, I finally said, my voice carrying clearly in the silent ballroom. The answer is still no. This is your wedding day. Please do not ruin it. That was when Madison completely lost control. You are ruining it, she screamed. Before I could react, her open palm connected with my cheek in a sharp, stinging slap that echoed through the ballroom's sound system. The impact sent me stumbling backward. My face burned with pain and humiliation as 200 wedding guests gasped in collective shock. Several people immediately stood up. Some guests started pulling out their phones to record what was happening. Others headed for the exits, clearly uncomfortable witnessing such a private moment. Judge Williams moved quickly through the crowd toward our table. Ladies and gentlemen, he called out, his authoritative voice cutting through the chaos. I am Judge Harrison Williams of the Seattle Municipal Court. The room fell silent again, everyone recognizing the gravity of having a judge present during what had just occurred. I have just witnessed an assault. Judge Williams continued, reaching our table. Regardless of family relationship, what I saw constitutes a criminal act. Madison's face went white as the realization hit her. The adrenaline from her outburst was clearly wearing off, and she seemed to understand for the first time what she had done. It was just family drama, she stammered, looking around at the shocked faces staring back at her. I did not mean... It was not. Assault is assault, Judge Williams said firmly. The relationship between the parties does not change the legal definition of the crime. Kyle jumped up from his seat, rushing to Madison's side. Please, everyone, just calm down. This got out of hand, but we can work this out as a family. I touched my cheek, feeling the heat radiating from where Madison had struck me. The physical pain was nothing compared to the humiliation of being attacked in front of so many people. But something interesting happened in that moment of crisis. Instead of feeling defeated or victimized, I felt a surge of clarity and strength. I am pressing charges, I announced clearly. Judge Williams immediately took charge of the situation. He pulled out his cell phone and called the Seattle Police Department, identifying himself and explaining that he had witnessed an assault at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel. Officers are on their way, he informed me after ending the call. I will provide a full witness statement about what I observed. Madison collapsed into her chair, finally understanding the magnitude of what she had done. Her white wedding dress suddenly seemed like a costume for a play that had gone horribly wrong. Serenity, please, Kyle begged, approaching me with his hands raised peacefully. She did not mean it. The stress of the wedding, the family pressure, it all just built up. You will ruin our marriage before it even starts. She ruined it herself when she chose violence over communication. I replied calmly. The wedding guests were slowly filing out of the ballroom. Some stopped to offer me support or ask if I was okay. Others left quickly, clearly uncomfortable with the drama they had witnessed. The elaborate dinner Madison had planned sat untouched on the tables. My mother arrived 20 minutes later, having heard about the incident from one of the guests who called her. I expected her to take Madison's side to try to convince me to drop the charges for the sake of family unity. Instead, she surprised me. Madison Elizabeth, Mom said sternly, using my sister's full name like she had when we were children in trouble. You have gone too far this time. Madison looked up hopefully. Mom, she refused to help us. She has this huge penthouse and would not even let us stay there temporarily. I do not care if she owns 10 penthouses, Mom replied. You do not put your hands on family. You certainly do not assault someone at your own wedding in front of 200 people. The police arrived 30 minutes later. 2 officers took statements from me, Judge Williams, and several guests who had witnessed the incident. Madison was arrested and handcuffed, still wearing her wedding dress. Kyle was crying, begging everyone to reconsider, but the legal process was already in motion. Judge Williams explained that he was ethically obligated to report what he had witnessed, regardless of his personal relationship with Kyle's family. As the police led Madison away, she looked back at me one final time. I hope you are happy now, she said bitterly. No, I replied honestly. I am not happy, but I am standing up for myself. The wedding venue staff worked quickly to clear the ballroom and return the gifts. Most of the guests had left by then, but a few family members remained to help manage the aftermath. 2 weeks later, we appeared in court. Judge Williams had recused himself from the criminal proceedings due to his personal connection to the case, but he provided detailed testimony about what he had witnessed. Madison was charged with 4th-degree assault. The prosecutor, noting that the incident occurred in front of 200 witnesses and involved significant planning and premeditation, recommended anger management classes and community service rather than jail time. The judge agreed, sentencing Madison to 6 months of anger management counseling, 50 hours of community service, and a year of probation. She was also required to pay my medical bills, which included treatment for a bruised cheek and several therapy sessions to process the emotional trauma. Most importantly, I was granted a 6-month restraining order that prevented Madison from contacting me directly. The legal consequences were one thing, but the personal aftermath was more complex. Madison and Kyle's marriage survived, but it started under a cloud of legal troubles and public humiliation. They had to return most of their wedding gifts and deal with the embarrassment of having their wedding video include footage of the assault. I took 2 weeks of vacation immediately after the court hearing. I drove to my grandmother's house in Oregon, where I spent time walking on the beach and thinking about how I had gotten to this point. In therapy, I realized that I had been enabling Madison's entitled behavior for years. Every time I rescued her financially, every time I made excuses for her selfishness, I had reinforced the idea that she could demand whatever she wanted from me. Setting boundaries was not cruel or selfish. It was necessary for both of us. When I returned to Seattle, I made some changes. I renovated the guest bedroom in my penthouse, turning it into an art studio where I could pursue my passion for watercolor painting. I started hosting dinner parties for my neighbors, building the kind of community I had always wanted but never made time for. I also started volunteering at a legal aid clinic, helping people navigate housing disputes. The experience taught me how common family financial conflicts really are, and how important it is to maintain clear boundaries around money and property. 6 months after the wedding incident, Madison sent me a letter. The restraining order had expired, and she wanted to meet to apologize and discuss rebuilding our relationship. I agreed to meet her at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown, with our mother present as a mediator. Madison had clearly grown during those 6 months. She looked healthier, more centered, and when she spoke, her words carried a sincerity I had not heard in years. "I owe you an enormous apology," she began. "The person who slapped you at my wedding was not who I want to be. The anger management classes helped me understand how my entitlement and jealousy poisoned our relationship." She explained that therapy had helped her recognize patterns of behavior that went back years. She had always expected me to rescue her, to sacrifice my own needs for hers, without offering the same support in return. "I convinced myself that you owed me your success because we are sisters," she continued. "But that was wrong. You earned everything you have, and I had no right to demand any of it." Kyle had also been attending counseling both individually and as a couple with Madison. He apologized for pressuring me and for supporting Madison's unreasonable demands. We agreed to rebuild our relationship slowly, with clear boundaries and mutual respect. Madison would not ask me for financial help unless it was a genuine emergency. I would not offer unsolicited advice about their marriage or finances. It took another year of careful communication and family therapy sessions, but we eventually found our way back to a healthy sisterhood. Madison and Kyle moved into a modest house they could actually afford, and Madison started taking night classes to become a licensed massage therapist, increasing her earning potential. Our relationship now is different than it was before, but it is also stronger. We both understand that love does not mean unlimited access to each other's resources or unconditional acceptance of bad behavior. I learned that setting boundaries is not selfish. It is necessary for healthy relationships. The people who claim to love you the most will often be the ones who test those boundaries the hardest. Sometimes standing up for yourself means losing relationships temporarily, but it can also mean saving them in the long run. Family dynamics are complicated, shaped by years of shared history, unspoken expectations, and deeply ingrained patterns. But they do not have to stay the same forever. With effort, honesty, and professional help when necessary, even the most damaged relationships can heal. The penthouse remains my sanctuary, but it is no longer a symbol of division between Madison and me. She has visited several times since we reconciled, and she genuinely celebrates my success now, rather than resenting it. I still think about that wedding day sometimes, about how quickly everything escalated and how differently it could have ended. If Judge Williams had not been there, if I had not pressed charges, if I had continued enabling Madison's behavior, we might still be trapped in that toxic dynamic. Instead, we both learned valuable lessons about respect boundaries and what it really means to love your family. Love does not mean sacrificing your dreams for someone else's expectations. Setting boundaries is not about building walls. It is about creating a foundation strong enough to support genuine relationships. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is refuse to enable their worst impulses. Family will always be complicated, but I would rather have complicated relationships with boundaries than simple relationships where I lose myself. As I finish this story, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? How did you handle the pressure to sacrifice your own needs for someone else's demands? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life family stories. Share this video with anyone who might be struggling with similar family dynamics. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that standing up for yourself is not selfish. It is necessary. Here is to building healthier relationships and stronger boundaries. Take care of yourselves out there.